Okay. All right, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody, to School of Mitzvot. Today we're going to be continuing the study of Hilchot Shabbat, Zed Hashem, Hilchot Shabbat Kodesh. We'd like to dedicate tonight's learning for the Refuah Shlema of Kol Cholei Yisrael, specifically Tiran ben Basa, Shmuel Moshe ben Penina, Shachar ben Chana, Rabbi Baruch ben Sivya, Yaakov Yisrael, Avram ben Chana, Esther Helen. If you guys have any names you want to add for Refuah Shlema, Mordechai ben Evelyn, right? Mordechai ben Sarah, Mordechai ben Adina. Anybody else? One more time. Yechia ben Fariba. Nasrin bat Zarin. Sarah bat Mazal. Okay. Avram and Tamara. May they all have a refuah shlema betoch shar cholei Yisrael. Amen. Okay. Limud Torah is very powerful. So Baruch Hashem, we want to give them that zechut. Okay. So Baruch Hashem, we're continuing on in the Melachot of Shabbat. And the next Melacha, after we spoke about the Melacha of planting. So the next one on the list is the Melacha of plowing on Shabbat. So, like we said, always, in order to create the dyes for the temple, remember, we said that everything that we learn, everything that we cannot do on Shabbat comes from whatever was done in order to build the Mishkan, the tabernacle, on in the desert rather. So whatever was done, whatever was done to create that Mishkan, that is what we're not allowed to do on Shabbat. So we said they had to make dyes for the color of the curtains. As if it's cold, feel free to close the window, no problem. Sorry. If they needed to plant things in the ground in order to get those plants and then make them into a color. So the first thing that was involved is you have to actually dig a hole in the ground first in order to be able to plant those seeds in. So the Gemara actually says that in truth, even though Zorea is the first one on the list, but actually what comes before Zorea, which is planting, is actually the act of plowing, which is making that hole in the ground and then going ahead and planting the seed. So that's important to be aware of as well. Okay, so now, therefore, there are things that we cannot do that have to do with the act of plowing. And just to be clear, plowing means anything, any kind of action that makes the ground more fertile or more able to plant things in it, softer ground, ground that is, now not so hard anymore because you did something to it to make it softer, that it should be able to take, that a seed should be able to take root in it. Anything like that is going to be considered the act of plowing on Shabbat. And the word for plowing again is Chorsh. Okay, so it's important to be aware of that. So far, so good, everybody? Okay, excellent. So let's give some basic examples. Hello, how are you? Welcome. Okay, so plowing a field, obviously, is going to be problematic. Even if you're just trying to plant one small seed, it says HaChoresh Kol Shehu. Even if it's just a little bit, moving one bit of dirt for this purpose is going to create a problem. If you are trying to, let's say, rake the soil, if you're putting soil enhancers, things to make the soil better, that is going to be a problem of Choresh on Shabbat because you're enhancing the ground, making it ready to receive a seed. That's a problem. Okay. So now, a lot of the acts of plowing that we are talking about actually have to do with things that we would not think would be a problem. I'm trying to do one thing, but I'm ending up doing something else. We spoke about this in the past. Let's review because it does refer to the act of plowing. For example, the act of dragging a chair across the grass. We spoke about this, correct? Yes? Okay, beautiful. So this could be an act of plowing. How so? If you know, for example, that the chair is very heavy, the chair is extremely heavy and the ground is not so hard. It's going to create a ditch in the ground. So are you allowed to drag the chair? The halakha says, no, you cannot. Why? Because you know for a fact that this heavy chair or this heavy table is going to create a ditch in the ground. Who remembers the terminology for that? Anybody remember what's that called? I'm not trying to dig a hole in the ground. I'm trying to drag a chair from point A to point B. But a hole is going to be made. I'm going to create a furrow. It's a davar she'eino mitkaven with a, you said it, psik reisha. Very good. It's a psik reisha. And when something is a psik reisha, you cannot do it. Psik reisha means that you know for a fact, even though you're not intending on doing it, but you know it's going to happen, so then you cannot do it. For example, person opens up the door to the refrigerator. He does not have in mind to turn on the light bulb, but he knows the light bulb will turn on. You walk in front of the doors of the hospital and you know that the doors will open because you walked there. Again, you didn't have that in mind. You're just walking by, but you know it's going to happen. So you can't do that. Why? Because that's called a psik reisha. Very good. You got to know that term. Psik reisha. Chop off the head. You can't say, I want to chop off the head of a chicken and the chicken should stay alive, right? Yes, you're just trying to give your son a toy. Fine. That's a very odd toy, but you want to do that? Okay. But you can't say, I didn't have in mind to kill the chicken. It doesn't work like that. You're going to kill the chicken. You know that it's going to happen. Whenever you know that the result of your action indefinitely is a melacha, you cannot do that. Right? Clear? We spoke about it? Okay, so now the big question that comes up is, what about situations where you know that you're going to make a hole in the ground? You know for a fact. We actually talked about this a little bit, and now I would like to elaborate because it's the melacha that this falls under. High heels, okay? Nice high heels over grass, or person has a sharp cane that a walking stick, and the cane will dig a hole in the grass, or chairs inside of a sukkah. The sukkah is on the grass, or in a tent outdoor. Somebody's making an outdoor, I don't know, brit milah on Shabbat. They're making some kind of outdoor event on Shabbat, and you go to that event, right? So, is that okay? Now, remember, if you sit down and there's a chance that it's not going to sink into the ground, there's no question, it's fine. Why? Because that's called what? Davar she'eino mitkaven. It's something that you didn't have in mind. It's like dragging the chair across the grass when it's not necessarily so that it's going to make a ditch, right? So that's okay. Why? Because even if it did, you didn't have it in mind, and the melachot of the Mishkan were melachot that were premeditated and intentional, and this was not intentional, and you didn't even know it was going to happen. It could have just as easily not have happened. Okay, but over here, you know it's going to happen. You know your heels are going to go straight into the ground. You know that chair, the minute you sit in it, is going to sink straight into the ground. You know the cane is going to go into the ground, and all these cases, you know for a fact it's going to go into the ground. Mutar or asur. So over here, now we have to pull out some of our previously learned knowledge and apply it. So first of all, we have to remember one important concept that we spoke about before, and that is shinui. Who remembers what shinui means? Very good. A change, a deviation from the normal way of doing the melacha. So for example, we said that normally if you want to pluck an apple off the tree, that would be the melacha of kotzer, of harvesting. So here, this is definitely the melacha, right, of kotzer. You plucking an apple off the tree is no good. What if you take the bite off of the apple while it's still attached to the tree, right? You go over to the apple still attached to the tree and you bite a piece of it off, right? That would be a shinui. You're still taking it off the tree, but you're doing it in a strange way. So we said that is also forbidden, but is it forbidden mideoraita or is it forbidden midirabanan? It's forbidden midirabanan. Okay, so that's number one. So this action over here, the poskim want to say, to begin with, is not how you make a hole. It's not how you make a hole in the ground. Making holes in the ground, usually for the purposes of digging a ditch, are not done this way. So first of all, this is one of the beautiful explanations that Rabbi Ribiat, in his 39 Melachos book explains over here. So he says, first of all, let's call the spade a spade. It's not how you normally do the melacha. It's a shinui. That's number one. Number two, he says, usually speaking, to make a hole in the ground like this, unless you actually have what to do with that hole, for example, planting a tree, planting a seed, or maybe you need to make holes here anyway, you want to put something in this location, maybe you want to make an extension or something like that, so you need that act of digging a hole. But unless you have some kind of need for it, then it's what we would call actually a destructive act. You don't need this. You don't need this action at all. It's not doing anything for you. There's a term for that. The term is called mekalkel. You got to write this one down too. It's good that we're learning all this stuff in the beginning of these melachot because they really play an important role throughout all the laws of Shabbat. So mekalkel. Let's write this down, guys. Mekalkel. Mekalkel. Mem kuf lamed, or mekalkel. Mekalkel, which means damaging, destroying. And the law is that whenever you do on Shabbat an action which is mekalkel, meaning that it does a destructive act, it doesn't do something positive for you. So then, although you cannot do it on Shabbat, but it's not midoraita, it's only midirabanan. It's only prohibited rabbinically. Okay? Sure. Whenever you have an action that is a destructive action, you're not accomplishing something, you're not creating something, but rather you are destroying. For example, a person, let's say you have a paper shopping bag that's around your food, and you want to get to the food. So instead of just taking it, from the top, you rip it open and you destroyed the shopping bag, right? That's an act of mekalkel. You destroyed. When you destroying on Shabbat is not something which is prohibited midoraita, it's prohibited midirabanan, rabbinically. Why? Because remember, in the construction of the Mishkan, what they did was they created, they built, they accomplished things. They didn't destroy, right? Melacha means to create, to do labor, not to destroy. So therefore, on a Torah level, it's not a problem. But the rabbis came and said, don't do that either. Don't destroy things. So we don't destroy things on Shabbat. Fine. Okay, fine. We said another point. Did we talk about lo nichale yet? We didn't talk about, okay. All right, now, yes.
I have a question about mekalkel.
Yes.
So before you mentioned, like if you make a hole because you want to make an extension or something, wouldn't that be a positive act because it's for the purpose of building something?
Absolutely. Correct. But let's say that it's not for that purpose. It's just a hole in my backyard now.
Oh, like the chair sinking.
Exactly. This is not anything positive. It's a hole in my backyard.
So if you know for sure, if you know it's a pasik resha,
right,
for sure it's going to create a hole.
Exactly. So
it's mekalkel.
Okay. Now you're thinking exactly where we're going. Very good. Kol hakavod. Let's hold off on that for a second, and we'll put it all together.
And sorry, which part is the Rabbanan? The fact that you're not doing it for the purpose of planting?
I'm sorry?
Which part was it?
The fact that it's destructive. You don't have any positive benefit from this hole. You're not putting a new part of your house here. You're not putting a seed here. You're not planting anything here. You gain nothing from it. You're not hiding anything here, right?
If it was for the purpose of like construction, but not planting a plant.
Okay, so at least you made a hole. You made a hole for the purposes of a hole that you need. You need this hole right now, right?
Right, but would that be
that would be doraita?
Right.
You need the hole.
No, I just wanted to know if it wasn't like the.
That's not a kilkul. That's when you need.
But is that the avot melach?
Is that the yeah? Sure.
It doesn't have to be for planting. It's just the hole.
It's when you make a hole because you need the hole.
Right.
So understand? That's exactly okay. Good. So we have another factor that I want to speak about, and introduce you to. This is called, let's go back to Davar She'eino Mitkaven and Psik Reisha. Again, I'm talking about these concepts a lot because it's so important to be familiar with them to understand the laws of Shabbat. So the person is doing an action that is not, the intention of that action is not a melacha. And then we say to him, yeah, but you know the melacha will result. So you can't do that, right? You know the melacha is going to take place. So you cannot do this action. Fine. Why? Why is that? Because we say, look, you knew it was going to happen. So therefore, if you did it anyway, it means you wanted it to happen. Problem. So you can't do it. So you knew that when you open the door of the refrigerator, the light will turn on. So it's as if you wanted it to turn on because you know that that's exactly what's going to happen. Included in your opening the door is turning on the light of the fridge. Problem. Fine. So what if, however, we can prove that you didn't want it to happen? You don't gain anything from this whatsoever. Let's say, for example, you open up the door of the refrigerator and the lights are in the fridge. The lights in the refrigerator, besides for, let's say, the main light bulb, are already turned on anyway. You could see even without the light bulb. Let's say, for argument's sake, I could give you a fridge like that the lights inside are always on except the light bulb on the top. And it happens when you open the door, that one turns on too. Did that light bulb that just turned on by you opening the door, did it really change anything for you? Did it add anything for you? It didn't really accomplish anything for you because you have light anyway, right? You know that you have light when you open up right? So that is called a Psik Reisha delo nichale, which means it's a Psik Reisha that is happening, but at the same time, it does nothing for you. You could care less about it. Okay? Do we talk about that?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the same thing. Halacha views it as the same thing. Lo nichale, lo ichpat le. We're going to say the same thing.
What's the last word?
De lo ichpat le or de lo nichale, which means you don't care about it. It doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't accomplish anything for you. You don't even want it to happen. Lo nichale means you don't want it to happen. Lo ichpat le means you don't care if it happens. Nichad nun yud chet aleph, lamed yud hey. Lo nichale, which means you don't want it to happen. Or lo ichpat le, you don't care if it happens. It doesn't accomplish anything for you. Automatically, that is not considered a melacha midoraita. It's considered melacha miderabanan. Okay. So Rabbi Ribiat, in his work, the 39 Melachos, brings down those who make the following argument about high heels, about the sharp cane, about the chairs on the grass when you sit down and you sink in, and about the sukkot that are on the grass, etc. He makes the following very interesting argument. He says, listen, you're right, we're not allowed to make holes in the ground on Shabbat. Correct. But let's think about the following case. Let's say I'm invited to your house, Mazal Tov, you had a baby boy, and you're making a Brit Milah on Shabbat in your house. You take a nice tent in your backyard, have tables set up, chairs, very nice, and we're in your tent in the backyard. And as I sit into my seat about to have the meal, what happens? I sink into the ground and I realize I just made 4 huge holes in your backyard. And I said, oh my gosh, I just did Melechet Chorsh, very bad. So says Rabbi Ribiat, think about it this way. Right now, do those holes in the ground, I'm sorry guys for the noise over here. Maybe we could just close that window and stop making noise, I'm sorry. Okay, the other one. Yeah, sorry. So maybe Rabbi Ribiat says, let's look at it this way. Why don't we look at this as what we would call a Psik Reisha, lo nichale, or lo ichpat le. Why? Okay, we know that you're going to sink into the ground. Fine. You're going to sink in. Okay. But whose ground is it, first of all? Is it your backyard? No. It's your friend's, but it's somebody else's backyard. So I'm making a hole in somebody else's backyard, even if I would intend on doing it, right? Meaning, I shouldn't say it like that, but the point is, you can obviously tell that this doesn't make a difference for me. That's really the point. You can't claim against me, oh, he wanted this. Why would I want it? It's a hole in your backyard. I'm not interested in this. It doesn't do anything for me. It may be accomplishing something for you, but not for me. So how could you say, oh, he definitely meant to do that? You understand? Therefore, says Rabbi Ribiat, again, this would be called psikreisha de lo nichale. It's only the Rabbanan. So he comes up with the following formula. Was that point clear or no? Yes or no? Not really? Not really. Let's say. So then we wouldn't say this. So then we would not say this.
Only if it's in someone else's backyard.
Correct. Right. In somebody else's backyard, you have this added point too. So I'm going to your backyard to sit in your sukkah. I sit down in the chair and I sink very far into the ground. Says this wonderful rabbi, this would be called psikreisha lo nichale. It doesn't do anything for me. So it's forbidden rabbinically. Fine. So he brings a beautiful argument. He says the following. He says, let's analyze the whole situation. This action to begin with, if it's in somebody else's backyard, not your own, is psikreisha de lo nichale. Number one. Number two, you're making a hole and you're digging in a very weird way. This is not how it's done. So that's a shinui. It's number two. He says, number three, it's mekalkel. You're doing actually damage. You're not even doing positive for this person in his backyard. He doesn't need the hole. He's not extending. He's not digging. He's not planting. You're actually just messing over his place. So therefore, he says, it's another D'Rabbanan. He makes the argument that it's likely to say that the rabbis would not make a decree if all of these, in other words, the Torah allows it on so many levels, and in order for it to become a problem, they had to make it forbidden in this case, and that case as well. In other words, it's so many factors here that say that it shouldn't really be a problem. The rabbis would not prohibit it in this case, because to begin with, it's not a problem. It's a psikreisha lo nichale, which is only rabbinically forbidden. And even if you had in mind to do it intentionally, it's also only rabbinically forbidden because it's being done in a weird way. And even if you actually did have in mind to do it in a normal way, but you're actually causing the guy a problem in his backyard, you're not accomplishing anything, you're not fixing anything, you're actually doing damage, which is also only rabbinically forbidden. Therefore, he makes the argument that it's okay to do it. The high heels would be okay, the cane with a sharp point on the bottom would be okay, and you sitting in the sukkah or the tent would be okay as well, because of the fact that it's very far removed from the Doraita that the rabbis are trying to keep you away from. Is it clear or no?
Yeah.
No? I see some question.
The word mikalkel, it confuses me as to why there's a distinction for mikalkel. Like, how is that different than, somebody that doesn't benefit from something? It's hard, like, can you give more examples for mikalkel versus?
Sure.
Like creating?
Mikalkel is even intentionally, meaning, let's say that I have a bag of potato chips, right? Or I have a tissue box, right? And the tissue box, there are two ways of opening the tissue box. One way is you can open it from the perforations on the top. The other way is you can actually slice open or maybe just rip open the side of it, right? That would be a mekalkel. You did an act of mekalkel. You didn't do it nicely. You actually damaged the tissue box. You didn't do a good job. So therefore, that would automatically lower it to a lower level. It wouldn't be Doraita, it would only be Rabbanan. And what we're going to learn, Zashem, as we go on, is that in certain instances, the rabbis who said that to do something in the form of a kilkul, which means to damage it, that's a problem, in certain cases will allow you to do it if you're doing it in a damaging way. So it's important to be aware of the concept. Sure. Clear? Yes.
Might not be like specific to Shabbat, but we say that the rabbis, it's like the Torah.
Correct.
So how does it downgrade?
Because the rabbis who made the rule also gave leniencies to that rule. So therefore they said, okay, this is a problem generally, but if it's a problem only because of something else that we said, and that also is only a problem because of something else that we said to begin with. It's not really a problem, just we made it up. Then we're willing to be lenient in when there are many factors like that. In the system they created, they also put in the leniency. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
In that example you gave, are all three of those factors necessary to make it mutar, or?
So that's the thing. We're not gonna decide these things on our own. I'm just giving you over an argument.
No, I just want to know, like, according to the Rav who said this.
Yeah.
He's saying
that the rabbis never made it prohibited in such a case.
That is all three.
Yeah, like that.
So if one is missing, then.
So then it might be more of an issue, right?
Okay.
But it's like he's like, basically, I could definitely tell you that when it's like this, it's okay. That's what he was saying. Okay, fine. Yes. What I was telling you about? Rabbi Ribiat.
So like
Yes.
everyone just accepts his opinion?
No. No, the way that I tell you what he says, because the argument makes sense to myself, and that's why I give it over to, because it's a clear, in my opinion, it's a clear argument. That's why sometimes he'll say things and I'll be like, what is he talking about? Right? And sometimes I would say something, he'd probably be like, what is he talking about? You know, there's always stuff like that. Yeah. But to me, it's a good argument. Yeah. Yeah.
I thought in the Gemara it says you're allowed to rip something in a destructive way on Shabbat.
So not exactly. It's a kilkul. You're not supposed to do kilkul, but
You're allowed to.
we're going to get there. When we get to that rule, we'll talk about it. B'ezras Hashem. Okay, we have time though until we get to that rule. Is it clear? The idea is clear? Yes.
I think probably said it a few times, so to make sure, the three, it's lo nichale.
You're right. It happens to be, this is psikreation lo nichale. You're sitting in somebody else's backyard, does nothing for you. Right. So even if you are doing something creative here, it's not really for you. So you can't say, oh, he wanted that. Well, why would I want that? It's not doing anything for me. The other two is, even if you actually intended to make a hole by sitting down on the ground, it's a shinui. It's not how it's normally done. Usually they use a shovel, they use something, this is not how it's usually done. And number three, it's actually a detrimental thing. You're not doing anything for the guy. He doesn't need the hole. He would rather not have the hole. You're actually destroying his property. So that's
what's the Melacha of making?
Chorsh. Chorsh. Right. Okay. Let's move on. Sometimes there are examples of chorsh that you wouldn't really think about. For example, person whose kid is digging in the sandbox, right? And it's maybe nice and hard, and the kid is making it softer by pushing around and making it softer, so that if, let's say, you would make a hole, the walls of the sand would just kind of fall in because he made it softer. That would be an act of chorsh, believe it or not. Beautiful example again from Rabbi Ribiat. Very nice. If a person has hard soil and they pour water on it to soften it and they make it more suitable for planting, that's the Melacha of chorsh as well. Putting fertilizer in the soil to make it more available for planting is chorsh. You can't do that on Shabbat. Okay. Are you allowed to push the stroller on grass or on a dirt path on Shabbat? Or is that called chorsh? So the Gemara says that that's perfectly fine. It's something called, the Gemara in Masechet Beitzah calls it koveshet, which means that it does not uproot, but rather it pushes down on the ground. So therefore, the act of pushing down is not a melacha of chorsh. It's not uprooting the soil. It's not making it more able to receive seeds and to germinate, but rather it's just pushing down on it. So therefore, it would not be considered a problem. The act of weeding, let's say a person weeds out of the ground so that the plants grow better, that makes the ground better and more suitable for plant growth. That would also be a problem of chorsh. Okay, clear so far, so good. Excellent. Now, there's a big discussion in the laws of Shabbat, which is called mashve gumot, or the Gemara's lashon is ashvuye gumot. Ashvuye gumot means that a person is not allowed to flatten or level a terrain, which means that now why am I mentioning this? You think this is like totally irrelevant. There are halachot that come out in a practical sense from this basic issue, so it's important to get the idea clear. So if a person flattens or levels the terrain, so then what he's doing is he's making it an easier surface to deal with, and that would be the problem of Chorsh, making it easier to use this ground. So if let's say you have a hole over here, because I just sat down in a chair and I sunk into your grass, now you're all upset. You say somebody's going to fall into this hole and they might hurt themselves. So you go and you fill up the hole with some dirt. Besides for some other problems that might be there, but you just take some dirt, fill it up. So that's called ashvuye gumot. Can't do that on Shabbat. That's a melacha of Chorsh. Now, it's important to be aware of this because the Gemara tells us that back in the day, many of the houses that people lived in the floors were made of dirt. The floors were simply dirt. There was no tile, there was no wood, there was nothing there. It was just dirt. So the problem that would come up is if you go ahead and you flatten the surface in your own home, it's a big problem. It's a big problem. Now, in the house, it wouldn't be called Chorsh. Chorsh is in the field when you plow. In the house, it would be called building because it's part of building your structure. But either way, whether indoors or outdoors, flattening a surface or leveling a surface of the ground is a problem. It's called ashvuye gumot. For this reason, by the way, the halacha says, the rabbis made it prohibited for someone to play games, let's say, what's it called? Gulot. How do you say gulot? Is it jacks or any of these games that, the kugel, the little thing, you throw it up, you catch it. What's that thing? What? What's that called? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that you can't play that outside on the dirt. The rabbis were concerned that there might be a little bump or there might be a little bit of a hole. Somebody would want to have a flatter surface and they might come to level the terrain. It might come to level. Well, this is being done on the floor. You're sitting down and you're doing it on the grass. Or doing it on the floor. So for that reason, they made it prohibited. Okay, so that's important to be aware of. Now, the big question that comes up is like this. Being that this is the case, is it possible to sweep the floor? Because remember that back in the day, they used to sweep the floor in the house, but that would be flattening surfaces. So originally, the rabbis made a decree that you're not allowed to sweep your floor on Shabbat. Originally, hold on. Okay, why original? Why is it? The rabbis made a decree. You cannot sweep the floor on Shabbat. Why? Because imagine you're sweeping the floor on Shabbat, getting all the crumbs and whatever from the meal, off and throwing them out. And then all of a sudden you see that your floor is a little bit unlevel. Very easily you take the broom and go like that, and now it's flat. And you just smoothened out and flattened your floor on Shabbat. It's a problem of ashvuye gumot. You just filled in the hole. It's a problem. So the rabbis made a rule, not allowed to sweep on Shabbat. Okay, fine. So definitely that rule still holds true for outdoors. If you're outdoors and you have crumbs after a meal or something, can't sweep outside. That's a sur. Why? Because there's a concern of ashvuye gumot, right? And the question is, but Baruch Hashem, inside nowadays, you don't have this problem. You don't have this issue because we all have floors with wood, with tile, with whatever it is you got on your floor. So for that reason, nowadays, the halacha is that you are allowed to sweep your floor. there is no problem of sweeping your floor on a tile or on wood. Now the issue is, very interestingly, that the Ramah held that even nowadays it's still a problem. So the Ashkenazim technically should be machmir, but came along the Chafetz Chaim, and he writes that as long as the majority of the houses in the city have a floor and it's not dirt, so then it's okay. So even they have the right to be lenient and sweep the floor. Okay. But the whole head, do you have a question? No? Okay. You have a question.
I still think that was sweeping the floor in the house is a problem. This is falls under
So in the house would be a problem of bonnet.
bonus.
Bonnet would be building.
Okay, got it.
Exactly. You're right. It's not a Choresh issue anymore. Once it's in the house, it would be bonnet. You're right. But once we're on the topic, we're just
Yeah.
going to talk about it inside too. So here's what happens. Although the rabbis permitted sweeping, the reason that they permitted sweeping is because sweeping is something which is necessary. There are always crumbs on the ground. There are always things that need to be swept up, and therefore it's permissible to sweep and to get rid of it. However, the rabbis forbade still, being that it's not absolutely necessary for Shabbat, forbade washing the floor. Okay, so that means is that if, let's say, you had 5-6 families over for Shabbat, Friday night, kids all over the place, soda stains and sticky stuff and all kinds of things all over the place, and all you want to do is wash that floor, and you want to wash it and get it all clean. So over here, the rabbi's rule still takes effect. And therefore they said that you cannot wash the floor on Shabbat. You cannot go and wash the entire floor. Now, wait a second, you have a problem. Some kid, God forbid, is feeling bad, he pukes all over the floor, what are you gonna do? Right? So over here, we have the added part to that, which is that if there's a need for a particular spot to be clean, you can spot clean. Okay? So what that means is that, first of all, you go over to the whatever it is that just happened on the ground, and you take your little dustpan, maybe it's a broom or maybe it's something else, scoop it all up into the dustpan, dispose of it, and then whatever you've got left is sticky and not pleasant, then you could spill water onto it, and you can wipe it with some kind of dry, maybe it's a paper towel, or maybe it's something that is like a little, what? The baby wipes are a different question of schita, which sometimes are okay. It depends on how wet it is. So interestingly enough, we'll get to this later, but if it's a very, very, very wet baby wipe, then it's okay to use on a baby. If it's not as wet, then it's not okay to use on the baby. It's to be extremely wet, so much so that you don't even need to squeeze out anything like the moisture, the wetness, the water is already on the surface even without you squeezing. That's how wet it is. But over here, it's a little bit more tricky, because most likely what you're going to be doing is you're going to be going, pushing down very hard. You're probably going to end up squeezing it.
Wait, you can't use a dry baby wipe.
Correct. You need a wet baby wipe.
So it's not like completely soaking it,
No. You need to buy a baby wipe that's very, very wet. I think
But they have.
the ones that I use, like the Costco ones, are good. I don't remember the Target. I think the Pamper ones are very good. They're very wet.
But why?
What?
They're not very right. You cannot use it on baby.
Because the problem is like this: if your baby wipe isn't so wet, so then what you're going to be doing is you're going to try and press on it so that the moisture comes out, that the liquid comes out, so that way it goes on the baby and have an easier time cleaning the baby.
No, it's wet.
What?
You clean the baby, it's just not soaking wet.
Not soaking. The point is that it needs to be wet enough that the moisture is there even without you having to press.
Right.
You understand? That's the
So
key.
If it's been like open for a while.
If it's been open for a while, you have a
Yeah.
problem. If it's been sitting out there for a long time, don't use that.
So you.
pull that one out and use the next
So
one.
baby wipes are considered cloth, like towel.
Yeah, they're like they are. They have a certain
But
material.
paper towels.
Look, even if it's a paper, you can't squeeze out liquid from a paper towel on Shabbat. I can't go to a paper towel and go, shh. It's not, you can't do that.
Right.
If you're pushing on whatever it is, and you're trying to get liquid out that way, it's a problem. But that's a different melacha. That's chita. We're right now in.
Spot cleaning, usually what I do is if there's a group juice, I'll just take a quick baby wipe and just clean the floor with a baby wipe.
Would be better to pour some water onto that spot and then take a paper towel and just scoop it up.
Can you use Windex or?
You could use Windex, sure. Windex it and then scoop it up. Yeah. Sorry, you want to add something? Want to finish up? You're good? Yeah. Huh?
You just put water on the baby juice then.
Sorry. So
You
you
feel like scrub them.
I have two
25
questions.
paper towels on
Okay.
top of it until it absorbs.
Okay.
and then pick it up.
you have 2 questions.
Two
Go.
questions. One, I'm still in the sweeping. If it's outdoor in the sukkah, there are tiles over there. But in between tiles, there's sand, it's outdoor. Still no spirit sweeping?
You're saying you have tiles, you're on a patio,
Yeah,
and there's
brick tiles.
brick. It's a good question.
or like regular I was gonna ask that question too, like a hard patio surface, there's no, it's
Dirt.
leveled, it's not.
Right.
No. That's fine. If
This
it's
is not level, it's
no,
brick.
it's
Oh,
fine.
okay,
Brick is
okay.
good, but your point is that you have like dirt and stuff in between it. You have grass in between it.
Yeah.
That's a different question.
That's-
That's a good question. I have to look that up. I think you have a problem there. You shouldn't do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second question, in regard to pouring water, I saw people pouring water on the floor, on the porcelain floor, and just, אתה יודע, עם הזה של ישראל, מג"ב, how do you say?
Okay. Yeah.
You just take it to one spot, and that's it, the floor is clean, you didn't,
You're not allowed to do the floor. You do a spot.
the whole floor is dirty.
Asur. Again, this is a Gzerat Chachamim. It's an old decree.
So asur to pour water and to take it to one side.
To the whole floor, no, it's cleaning the floor. You can't do that. You can spot clean. It's a Gzerah midrabanan. It's a rabbinical decree.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
so
my grandchildren was there.
okay, so that's
Your housekeeper can do either, right?
so a
Why
housekeeper.
not? If you don't tell the
No.
housekeeper, she just did it.
Yeah.
Housekeeper.
She could do it.
One second. Housekeeper is something else. Right now we're talking you. You yourself should not clean the whole floor. You need help from a goy. That's a different story.
No,
Okay, and then we'll talk about how to ask the goy and whatever. But that's a different story. Goyim or something else. We cannot do it. Yes.
Sorry, back to the sweeping.
Okay.
Are you allowed to sweep outside on a leveled surface, like a deck patio? If there's no cracks or.
Yeah.
So what's-
Outside on a like over here we have a porch.
Yeah, like on the porch.
No problem.
So where is the problem? I'm confused outside, like where,
Outside, I mean on the actual floor. Like let's say you were eating at a table outside. And it's not so pleasant, but you have grass underneath you. So there are crumbs and stuff. You can't sweep over there.
okay,
it's like an unfinished ground.
Right.
okay. Okay, got it.
But
Exactly.
as long as it's cement. or
If it's cement
asphalt,
pavement,
pavement,
then you would be okay. Yeah. Yes.
So you said no to bricks because of the predators?
Yeah, she said she has got grass and stuff in between them.
Oh.
I don't know. I have to look that up. My assumption is no. I have to look it up. Yeah.
And indoors it says tiles, we're allowed to sweep, even if it, let's say, because I have tiles, but there's like little crevices between the tiles.
Yeah, but underneath it is not dirt.
Right.
It's maybe whatever else they put underneath it.
Right.
When they built the house, you're not
So an
dirt.
elevated wooden deck is okay?
Yeah, that'll be fine. Okay. Yes.
Does the washing apply to tables? Or we're just talking about the floor right now?
Washing, no, washing you could wash a table, sure.
Wash tables.
Right now, we're talking floors.
Okay.
Floors was the issue because of this concern. You might come to flatten or to straighten, to level your floor. Inside is bonnet, outside is chorsh. It's a problem. Fine, okay. But let's say your countertop, no problem, right? Your table, no problem, right? Clear?
So you can always
what's
put
the difference?
Windex on a glass table. It doesn't matter.
Could always
whether-
what? Put Windex?
Like if you want to just Windex your glass table and there wasn't a big problem on the table.
You don't have a problem. Yeah, that's okay.
It's always okay.
Shoot the Windex, paper towel, and you're good. Yes, yeah.
If you were outside, you have stone, but you're pushing it off onto the grass.
Pushing what off your crumbs?
Yeah.
You want to sweep the crumbs off to the grass. So what you're doing is you're sticking to the stones, but you're sweeping it onto the grass, right? As long as you're sweeping on the stones, I don't see why it would be a problem.
Carefully with seeds.
Oh yeah, that's a good point, right? Last week we learned about seeds that potentially, let's say tomato seeds, apple core, things that could potentially grow
Right.
that you might be actually, planting, which is a problem too. Okay, clear?
Yeah.
Amazing. Let's go. Another couple of interesting things that come up. If let's say somebody spit on the ground or saliva or phlegm on the ground, you're not supposed to rub that into the soil. You can walk by it. If let's say you walk by it and you walked on it, that's okay. But you cannot, rub it in. That could be a problem of Khorsh as well. When you want to take things off of your shoes, let's say you've got something, I don't know, that's stuck to your shoe, and you want to kind of vigorously rub it on the ground. You shouldn't do that. You should rub it against the wall because you don't want to, again, talking about straightening the ground, that could be a problem. So therefore you want to make sure that if it's, let's say, gum, paste, mud, any other kind of sticky substance, so don't vigorously rub your foot on the floor because you might be doing Khorsh at that time, and therefore do it against the wall instead. Okay. Again, but is there a problem, let's say, playing those games on a regular tile floor? Like we said, those, what's it called again? The game, what? The kugelach. When I was a kid, they called it kungis. I don't know if maybe it was a Korean thing. Okay, fine. Anyway, that's what they called it, kungis. Anyway, so can you do that inside? Yes, you can, because inside there are tiles. There's no concern that you're going to be straightening any floor out. And therefore, there's no issue as far as that. Okay, very good. Excellent. So as far as Khorsh is concerned, those are the main things that are involved in this melacha. Okay.
I still
Yeah.
have a question, something that bothers me. Why can I clean the table and not the floor? Isn't it the same thing?
And the whole problem over here is not a problem of cleaning. It's a problem of, did the rabbis take away the decree against cleaning the floor out of a fear you might come to level your floor, you might come to straighten your floor? It's a floor problem. Remember the whole
Today we
problem.
have tiles, you can't.
Oh,
straighten
very
the
good.
floor.
So remember, originally the rabbis didn't even let us sweep the floor. Why? Because you might come to level it. So now that we have tiles, the rabbi said, okay, you're allowed to sweep, no problem. Even that was not so simple, like we said. Others argued, well, okay, we say you can sweep. Most of the houses have tiles, even Ashkenazim can do it. Okay, fine, we're good. But the question is, did the rabbis also take away the decree, now that we have tiles and wood on the floor, did they also take away the decree that you cannot wash your floor? And the answer is no, they never removed that. That decree still stayed. It still stands. They never took that away to begin with. That's here. So what are we allowed to do? You can clean a spot. You can't clean the whole thing. Let's say we have some kind of an event or something. You have a lot of people that are coming over, whatever the situation may be, and you need to clean up. So then, you need to make sure you have the, people that are there that can do that for you. Not yourself. Yeah. Yeah, pour hot water there. You take it from, let's say, the hot water urn, fill it up in a washing cup, maybe, and just pour on top.
Something dry.
Yes.
We cannot cut paper.
Do not cut paper towel on Shabbat. Correct. You have to pre-cut it. You have to cut it before Shabbat. Just like the toilet paper. You can't cut it. There's a shul here in that I have to mention to them that they don't provide tissues in the toilet in the bathroom on Shabbat. It's a problem. You have to make sure that there's tissues there.
Why is that?
Because you can't cut toilet paper on Shabbat. It's one of the melachot is called mechatech. Whenever you cut something to an exact size, like these toilet paper sheets, they come in an exact size. You cut it, it's one sheet. You cut it, it's another sheet. Perforation, exactly. Whenever you have the lines, like the lines of a check or a tissue box on top, the perforations, you're cutting it to an exact size. It's a problem of mechatech, which means cutting something to an exact size.
We cut into our fruits, vegetables.
Yeah, no, but that in other words, this already is set to an exact size. In other words, you could cut it 3 sheets, you could cut it 2 sheets, you could cut it 1 sheet. However, it's there so that you get it to be precise. Here by the tomato, you don't care if it's like this or like that. You cut it in a certain way, and it's however you feel like. But it wasn't set ahead of time. It's not like you have a perforation in your tomato that you cut it, you know what I'm saying, and it comes out exactly perfect. But anyway, the melacha mechatech is not by foods. It's by other things like leather that they had to make in a certain size when they created the Mishkan. But it doesn't apply so much to food. At any rate, it's important to be aware that you have to have those things ahead of time. Let's say you're stuck. We talked about this. We talked about this. Exactly. You're stuck and you go to somebody's house or you go to a shul that they don't have tissues and you have to do something. So you cut it not on the line with a shinui, right? With a deviation of how you normally do it. Yeah. Don't use those.
Some do, some don't.
Buy the ones that are not attached, the ones that are detached.
Kirkland is not perforated, Pampers is not.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying that we first open.
Oh, you have to prepare beforehand.
You want to pre-cut? You want to?
Well, I say,
I don't know, sometimes like, oh, I ran out, so you go get a new one, and there's like a.
Yeah,
The
so
top,
rip-
when
so
you
rip
first
it
open up
open.
the
So I
package.
ripped it from the side.
Yeah,
Very good.
So.
yeah.
Okay.
And then like aluminum foil and plastic.
You got to pre-cut that.
That
Yeah.
doesn't have a
I don't even
perforation.
use it.
Still, you are creating a sheet of aluminum foil because it's on this big roll. It's a problem. It's a melacha. All right, guys, very good. So that's Melechet Chorsh. We could stop over here. If we have questions, bechavod.